Hi everyone, this is Al from Skald again. Welcome back to another video where we do some Skald development, and you can follow along if you want to. I think we're going to continue where we stopped last. We were working on ships the last time, and I think we're going to continue and do some work on that. I'm currently working pretty hard to get out another version of the demo, and even though continuing to develop ships isn't really a big priority for the demo, it's a nice way to shift gears a little bit for me so it doesn't get too monotonous. So I think we'll just dig right in. What we'll do today is that we will try and change the way you interact with ships. Right now you just walk onto the ship to board it and you walk back on shore to disembark. I would like there to be a little bit more options. For instance, I would like for you to be able to open a dialog box with the ship when you try to board it for the first time, to give you the option of, for instance, chartering the ship or attacking it and so forth. So we'll try to fix that today. We'll see how far we get. Okay, let's start coding. So if you watched the last video we made, we started working on the vehicle container, and the vehicle container is basically a factory class that sort of encapsulates the vehicles themselves. And ships are a type of vehicle, so their definition exists inside the vehicle container, and pretty much all the map tiles, for instance, have vehicle containers, and also the player's party has a vehicle container. So when you move a vehicle from one tile to another, you, for instance, transfer them between the containers of two tiles, or you transfer it into the container of the party if the party is currently using the vehicle. And so we're not going to spend too much time on it right now, but suffice it to say that these archetypes of ships that are in here, we're going to add some data to them later, so we can have, for instance, different names on the ships, different descriptions of the ships, perhaps even things like the amount of gold you have to pay to charter a ship and so forth. But we'll look into that a little bit later. The way the code works right now is that whenever you try to move on the map between two tiles, there is a pretty huge function in a class called data control. And I'm not going to show you the entire function because it's really big and ugly. It's the kind of thing that will make you fail an engineering class if you're at university, so please don't look too closely at it. But here is the part of the function where you test to see if you are trying to move onto water. And even though I'm gearing the system to handle any kind of vehicle, it's mainly geared towards ships right now. That's why we're talking about water. And this is a pretty simple branching tree where we see if the tile you are trying to move into is water, then it tests to see if it has a vehicle. And if the party doesn't have a vehicle, you get the option to board the vehicle. And the way it's right now, because I've commented out these two, you will actually just board the vehicle, no questions asked. If you already have a vehicle, if you're already on a ship, it won't allow you to enter the tile for now. This is where we would put the ship-to-ship combat. If you are on a ship and they are on a ship, you enter and it's a hostile ship, you could fight them. We're not going to do that today, I think, but maybe later. And if you're trying to enter water and there is no ship in the tile, and also the party doesn't have a ship, then you simply cannot move onto the water. So this is also where we would maybe put something like, if there is magic that allows you to walk on water, for instance, we could have something in here to account for that. Yeah, and if you are on a ship and you're not moving onto water, you will use this to leave the ship. So it's a little bit obscure, it's a little bit arcane right now, but the thing to keep in mind is that this is the part of the code we're going to work in today. In those cases where you are entering a tile with water, the tile you're entering has a vehicle in it, and you are currently not on a vehicle. In other words, this would be where we would fire the dialogue screen for you to interact with the ship. So the way we would do that now is that we would use a function called mount vehicle container, which would basically let the state machine of the game control know that, okay, here is a vehicle that you might need to interact with, and if the state machine finds that interacting with this vehicle is the priority, for instance, so long as the party isn't dead or there isn't combat going on, it will fire. It will switch to a state that I have created. We will look at it very soon, called vehicle dialog state, and it will also terminate the move function that we are currently in, because you will instead initiate dialogue with the vehicle and you won't move. So the state that will be mounted, like I said, is called the vehicle dialog state. And the vehicle dialog state is, the way states work, it's we could talk about that for a little bit, is that you have these, instead of having the game trying to do everything all at once, you sort of have these little chunks of game logic that are interchangeable and specialized to what's going on the screen. So, for instance, there isn't much here right now. We're going to work on it a little bit later, but this will be very specialized, both to perform logic and to accommodate the UI in such a way that we can interact with a vehicle, for instance, a ship. If there was combat, there is a separate state for combat, for instance. There is a separate state for trading. There is a separate state for accessing your inventory, for leveling up, and so forth. And it makes it very manageable. And it's a pretty common design pattern in game design. I use it a lot. It's not very modern, but it's very effective, I think. So I really enjoy working on it. So since we uncommented these two lines, we now get a little bit of different behavior from the game. Earlier, when we tried to enter a ship, we could just board it. There was no questions asked. Now, when we try to board the ship, we get this little menu. There should be some text here. There should be some more a different title up here, a more specific title. The image is just a placeholder image. It was the closest thing I had to a boat. But this is a function of the vehicle dialog state. And there are, for instance, 3 options here. We could charter the boat, we could attack the boat, or we could just leave. And this is what we'll try to polish a bit today, so it becomes a little bit more interesting to try and board ships. The first thing we have to do is to look at this piece of code here that we started by looking at. I don't know if you noticed, but right now when we tried to board the boat, we both got the dialogue and we also boarded the boat, even though we didn't charter it. And that's not really what we intend. So the first thing I think we will do is to go to the vehicle class, because the ship class is part of the vehicle class, and all of the types of ships are parts of the ship class. So any change we make in the vehicle class will trickle down into the different types of ships. I think what we will add here is a variable, a Boolean variable, protected called chartered, and as a default we might set it to false. We could also add a method is chartered and just return the chartered variable, so that we can ask if the boat is chartered, and then we get the chartered variable. And we could also add another function here called charter vehicle, where we will set chartered to true, and then we will return chartered. It might seem redundant to have a return value on this method, but I think later on we would probably add some logic here where you might have an outcome where you're not able to charter the vehicle, and then we might have to return false and so forth. So I'll just keep it like this for now. But the idea now is that for every vehicle, you will be able to ask, is this vehicle chartered? And if it is, you can travel with it. And if it's not chartered, then you will get the dialog box instead. So we can go back now to data control, and we will add even more spaghetti code. If target tile dot get vehicle container get vehicle, we will look at the target tile, get the vehicle living on the or sitting on the target tile, and ask if that vehicle is chartered. If it is chartered, we will board the ship and be on our merry way. If not, then we will put up the mount vehicle container. We will mount the vehicle container, and then we will move to the vehicle dialog state. So this should work now. Let's see. So we move onto the boat, we get the dialog screen, we leave the boat, and it works perfectly. So now, for instance, we can go to the vehicle dialog state and start making some changes here. The first one, just to make it a little bit more interesting, is to perhaps add a different title. The state fetches the vehicle container that has been mounted, and the vehicle in that vehicle container when it's instantiated. So when the state machine switches to this state, it switches to these vehicles and it starts working. So we can start working with them. So we can, for instance, reference the vehicle and get the name of the vehicle. This should allow us to see the actual name of the vehicle when we, or the ship, when we go into the dialog box. And we could also do something like adding specific descriptions for different ships to the dialog screen, the dialog box. What we do here is that we use a text buffer, where the text buffer, the description itself, isn't updated every frame. It's only updated when something happens. So, for instance, the text buffer is updated when the state is created, and then it's updated again, for instance, after we can update it when we charter the boat and so forth. So, but we will just, because now the text buffer is set to be blank, but we will just take the vehicle, and since the vehicle is a Skald object, it will have a get description function that we can use to get the vehicle's description. Yep, that should do it. And finally, we should also just add the functionality to actually charter the boat for now. Let's just do it in a simple way just to see if it works. So we pass a list of options here. The options will be what is actually printed on the screen. These are just the names, but these tell us that we have 3 options in this scene and that they are ordered from first, second, and third. And if we look up here, we see in the update function that we look for input, indicating that either the first, second, or third option has been pressed. For instance, the third option is the option to leave. And if the third button has been pressed, we will initiate the exit state for this state, or the exit function, in fact leaving this. So this means that if we want to charter the ship, we'd have to add something in this, meaning that the first button has been pressed, the first option. So what we could basically just do now, since when we made the vehicle container we had a function that is called charter vehicle, we can basically just refer to the vehicle and charter it, like so. Now that should do it. And we can also do some work here. Let's say we override the get description method as well here in the ship. I think we can do something like, oops, something like this. Return the result. This is basically just doing what the original method did, but I think we can do something more here. We can do if the vehicle is chartered, we add to the result new line, the ship has been chartered and you may come on board. And then if it's not chartered, we could have something like you may charter this ship if you can afford it. And let's not worry about pricing yet. Let's just see if this works now. Oh, I actually forgot something here. We should actually just add some description as well. Just a short line just to see if everything works all the way through. A ship lies at anchor, like so. And then just to see if this works for different types of ships, we could do it for instance, the caravel, and also for the cog. And then we can test it properly. And we also forgot a tiny little thing here I just remembered. Because like I said, we draw the text buffer on the screen, but we don't update the text buffer in real time. We only do it whenever something happens. So it's important that we, when we charter the vehicle, we update the text buffer as well. And then we just do that by getting the description. Like so. Now I think everything should work. Okay, so here we are. Let's see now if we try to board the boats. A cog lies at anchor. You may charter this ship if you can afford it. We charter it. It has now been chartered and we may come on board. So now we can sail with this ship. And here we get the message that a caravel lies at anchor and that we may charter it. We charter it, it works. And now we can sail it for as long as we like. Okay, so I think that's it for now. I'm going to spend some time and polish this a little bit, and I think the next time we'll look into it, I think we will look into ship-to-ship combat and trying to forcefully board ships and so forth. So we'll see how that goes. Please leave a comment or like the video if you enjoy this. I'm very open to suggestions in terms of things you might want me to make videos on. I'm really just trying to get my bearings on YouTube. It's not really my medium, so it takes some getting used to, but I'm enjoying it so far, and making these videos are actually a lot of fun. So yeah, like and subscribe, and be sure to check out the Skald devlog for more information on the project. Have a nice day. Goodbye.